What's it like to play the Nintendo Entertainment System? Nintendo Entertainment System. Now you're playing with power.
JD here with more Moosen Spiel, and this is continuing the NES collection. We're going to go 6 through 10 and wrap up the sports titles, so I hope you enjoy. First up is Soccer. Came out in 1985, and this is what Nintendo was good at, was making those titles where it was a single word and it described exactly what it was. So this is an early sports title, and it's very noticeable. You get 7 teams to choose from, such as the Federal Republic of Germany, otherwise known as West Germany, and such other soccer powers such as the United States. Because when I think soccer, I think 1985 United States national team. But, you know, they had to be in it to sell the game over here, I guess. Well, you get 5 skill levels to choose from. B is to pass, A is to shoot. It doesn't get more simplistic than that, and the controls are pretty bad. It's pretty easy to steal the ball, it's hard to shoot, it's all based on that arrow at the goal. And yeah, I mean, when you get it down, I guess you can score, but there's not really much to say about the game. They make this funny little screaming thing when they score, and then the game just starts up again. But this was one of the first titles I had. It came in that big box of games when I first got my NES. So, you know, I played it. Didn't really know what soccer was at the time. It wasn't big in the US or where I was growing up in Texas. Luckily, there was such things as halftime, where for some reason there's cheerleaders. Because again, when I think actual football, I think cheerleaders. Because in Germany and the Premier League, there's cheerleaders all the time at the halftime games. Nah, that's really an American thing. At least the game sticks to its general rules, such as offsides, and that's about it. You can occasionally kick the ball out of bounds, but generally when you're passing, which is very hard to do, to pass to a teammate, the game, yeah, when it comes down to it, the game's controls aren't very good. It's hard as crap to score. But luckily, when that time goes up, the game's over, and you can celebrate, and that's about it. That's soccer. Next is NES Play Action Football, published by Nintendo and developed by Tosei, the Japanese developer, which was a sports game juggernaut. They also made Bases Loaded 3 by, featuring Ryan Sandberg, so they have a big sports background, which leaves you a bit optimistic on what kind of features this game would have. Of course, being football in the United States, gotta have that national anthem with Uncle Sam being on the trumpet. The game came out in 1990, so that leaves you to believe that the mechanics were well refined, but if it's anything like some of the sports games I've shown you in the past, it could be a 50-50 toss-up. Speaking of which, you only get 8 teams to choose from, and since there's no licensing rights, you only get to choose cities as opposed to actual NFL team names, and everything's chosen by a coin toss. Now what you notice is that the game is presented in isometric view to give you the feeling of 3D, so there's that, and the game features digitized voices, which, you know, it's not unheard of, but it was definitely not common. The game is actually quite deep, but it's really hard to tackle somebody. That's really my first complaint about the game. But luckily, the players were pretty accurate. The names were realistic to actual NFL players. And then you have a crazy amount of depth in the offensive-defensive selections. Offense gets about 30 seconds to choose, while defense gets only 5 seconds to choose their plays. So there's the depth in this is actually quite surprising. You would really think it'd be something closer to Tecmo football, where it's just pick a play and hopefully you get it right. Now for other features in the gameplay, you can There, you get to see every player on the field. The flicker is pretty much absent, as opposed to what we saw in Tecmo Basketball. And the defense will always run faster than the player with the ball. However, that doesn't really help to the fact that it's still hard as shit to tackle the guy. Now, one thing you may notice is when you score a touchdown, it goes into a cutscene depending on how you got into the end zone. So that's pretty cool. It kind of pumps you up after you score. However, as cool as that is, that does leave the field goals as a major issue. You can't see the goalposts, so you have no idea where you're kicking. Eventually, you figure out what letter you have to get the arrow in. But when you're first playing, it takes you a few tries to actually get the field goals down. So basically, NES Play Action Football. It's actually pretty fun. The games are fairly long, and the mechanics are there. So, a football game with a lot of depth. It's good. Ah, WWF WrestleMania Challenge. Boy, do I have memories of this game. Some good, some bad. Well, if you didn't notice by the cartridge, the game was made by LJN. And if you know anything about that company, boy, do they make fantastic games. But I digress. I was a huge, and still am, a huge wrestling fan. WWF, WCW, TNA, I've watched it all. So when I was very small, and there was a wrestling game, I wanted it. Well, the only one I knew that was out was this one. So I had to have it. And you can be all my favorite wrestlers that I liked growing up. Brutus the Barber Beefcake, The Ultimate Warrior, Macho King Randy Savage, Ravishing Rick Rude, Brutus the Barber Beefcake, Andre the Giant, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, yourself, haha, and Hulk Hogan. Had to have Hulk Hogan, right? The modes are pretty limited. Its original title was probably supposed to be something around Survivor Series, because that's what this whole game's focused around. So, let's get to the gameplay. There isn't much. You got some kick and punch, and you can hit them while they're down, but because of the isometric view and the limited movesets, it's hard as shit to get a hold of a player. You can't hit them if you ever go to the turnbuckle. You don't know the controls to get in and out of the ring without going on the turnbuckle. It's quite frustrating. It does make for about 20 minutes of fun, just pretty much being those old wrestlers all over again. I mean, when you play a tag match, whenever a wrestler enters the ring, you hear the 8-bit version of their entrance music, so that's cool. That's something to get excited about. But besides that, there's not really much else to the game. You have a stamina bar on the ring, so you basically go around trying to hit the guy, and once that stamina bar goes out, that's when you pin him. So, if you test out the 2-player mode or the tag team elimination challenge where you can try to get the tag belts, you face a gauntlet of the computers to get that title, but the computer level's so difficult, the odds of you winning are very slim. So, yeah, I can't recommend this wrestling game at all. The controls are terrible, it's hard as shit to win, you don't know how to enter and exit the ring properly. The only cool thing is you get to be those wrestlers, and how you do the finishing moves, I'll never know, but the computer can do it all day, such as Brutus the Barber Beefcake here, putting us in the sleeper hold, and it's like impossible to get out of it. So once that computer gets you in their move, it's done. So, yeah, you can pretty much skip this game. Hey, we have another single-word title for Nintendo. It's Golf. 3 options. 2 options of stroke play and match play. So, it came out in 1984, published and developed by Nintendo. It's the first golf game to have a power and accuracy bar. So that's interesting, because most golf games use that today. Actually, all of them, probably. The only difficult part is pretty much trying to figure out what club you're supposed to use at what distance and the power bar. The accuracy is fairly difficult to get a handle on at first, and it's quite sensitive. You play 18 holes, just like a regular golf round, and you just have the one course. So you always start at hole 1, and then you just work your way up. The pitching when you're close to the green is pretty much impossible. So you got to putt to the green. So that's not very good. The putting is actually pretty good, but when it comes to figuring out that distance on a drive or using a different club, it takes quite some practice to figure it out over time. It does get pretty satisfying when you get a handle on it, as well as the putting. It does make me wonder, though, how difficult it would have been to tell you how far away from the green you were and what distance, max distance, the club you were using had. I don't think it could have taken that much extra programming effort. So that's a big negative. If this was implemented, then the game would have been a lot easier, or at least it would have made sense, because golf is all about distance and accuracy. One really good thing about the game is as you progress from hole 1 to hole 18, the courses take a major turn in difficulty, so it really motivates you to get better at the game. So that difficulty curve is really nice, opens up the game for replay value, and you'll just have to see for yourself what I mean by how drastic the courses change. Let's just say water hazards become your main priority. I do recommend this for a simple, relaxing afternoon type of game. Just have a couple beers with a friend. On to the last one, Championship Bowling, developed by Athena Company. Yeah, they weren't around very long, and this game was not one of their shining stars. Now, a little background. I'm a major bowler, I'm an ex-pro, and I grew up bowling constantly all throughout my youth. So the fact that I have a bowling game isn't a surprise, and the fact I'm going to rip this apart shouldn't surprise anybody. Now, you do get to be 4 characters. They have some lanes you can choose from and different balls and weights. All good so far. However, upon playing this game, you'll find out basically none of it matters. I tested all aspects of this game, as a real bowler should. How close to the physics of bowling does this compare? So, no matter what you do, if you bowl straight down the middle, you'll get a split. That's fine. But splits are pretty easy to pick up, or impossible. You'll see what I mean later. Let's take this character for example. You have control and power. You have a brown background, so you can't see the power. And what control does is, if you're off center, then there's a curve in the back end of the lane. There's no front or forward curve to the ball, which is quite frustrating. The other thing is, when you figure out how to get splits, you'll get them every time. There's no challenge to that. The other part that's no challenge is, once you get a handle on bowling straight, you'll pick up just about every spare the game has to offer. The other problem I have with this game is, no matter what lane you're on, or what person, or with what ball, it doesn't make a difference. You would think that the girl with a heavier ball wouldn't be able to throw as much power behind it, but that doesn't matter, so all of the mechanics of bowling are essentially absent. I mean, basic bowling knowledge would say if you throw it slower with a lot of curve, it should hook like crazy and go into the gutter. But, according to this game, it doesn't matter. You could have all the control off-center as you want, with all the power, or the least amount of power. It'll still have the same exact curve as the ladder, or the opposite. So I tried and tried to try and get anything to work in this game. It took me way too long to get my first strike, and just testing mechanics after mechanics. It doesn't work. It's not a bowling game. Much like Tecmo Baseball was missing so many baseball elements, this game, Championship Bowling, is missing just about every bowling element to make it fun, at least from my perspective. If you compare it to something like Wii Bowling today, Wii Bowling's too easy, Championship Bowling is too hard. I mean, look at this high score. It's 200. My average in reality is better than that. Shouldn't a video game make you feel like you're better than in real life? I don't know. It's almost as if the people who made this game have never been bowling before, or they went one time to see how to bowl, in which then, of course, they wouldn't know how, and then they just go, okay, this is how you do it, I guess, and this is how we're going to make the game. To me, that is unacceptable. I never want to play this game again, but it's a part of my childhood, and luckily I don't remember a thing about playing this game as a kid, and there's probably a reason why. I probably blocked out all memory of this game, and I definitely plan to block some more out again. So here's a strike, and that's it. So that's wrapping up the NES collection, numbers 6 through 10, and some closing thoughts. The NES play-action football game has a crazy amount of depth for what it is. The soccer game's too primitive. Wrestling skip and avoid at all costs because it's LJN. The bowling game just pisses me off because the mechanics are not there. And finally, the golf game. Grab a couple beers, enjoy it, get used to the mechanics, and just have fun. So I hope you enjoyed the NES collection so far. I will be continuing it until finished. So I hope you continue to enjoy this. Like, comment, subscribe down below, and looking forward to the next one.